And we
Well, hello everyone, and here we are again at the Hobby Memorial Library. We have with us today Workforce Solutions of Central Texas. With us, Miss Ann Scotty. She's a SOAR specialist. We also have Lee Greenthaner, who is our host today. So we're basically going to cover the third section of our workshop series. If you have questions, make sure that you go ahead and write your questions in our comment section on Facebook, and then Lee will relay the questions to Ann. If you need this for credit, make sure that you go to our library website and find the events button and the registration and write down which professors that you would like us to contact that you had registered for this event. So I am going to, at this point, turn it on over to Miss Scotty. Welcome. And there you go. Take it away.
So hello, you, Cynthia, for the introduction. My name is Ann Scotty, and I am a SOAR specialist for Workforce Solutions of Central Texas. And basically, it is a student occupational awareness and recognition program. And what we do is we help with soft skills. We go and we do junior high school, and colleges, and we teach soft skills and job readiness skills. And the reason why this is so important to everybody is 85% of your skills, along with your hard skills, 85% is soft skills. So it's really important to know these skills for basically your whole life. So one of the most important ones is communication skills. And that's what I'm going to go over today. And with that said, communication skills is something that you can work on to be a more effective communicator basically every single day. That's one of the skills that you can constantly improve on. So today we're just going to go over a few tips on being a better communicator and communicating more effectively. So with that said, I am ready to begin. Okay, so this is communication. And this is just a little game of telephone. And basically, I can't do this virtually. But in the classroom, we always start with a message. And we role play the first person, the initial message to the last person. And we talk about how that initial message ended up and the reasons why the communication was not effective, and what happened to that message from the start to the end. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little bit about today as well as some conversational styles. Next slide, please. And basically the conversational styles and communication. Next. And these are the different types of conversational that most of you are familiar with, because you meet all kinds of people, and usually these are the different type of styles that you are going to really come in contact with almost every day of your life. You have first the dominant conversational style. You have the interruptive, right, which really the interruptive conversational style is really saying what I'm saying is more important than you. Okay, so that is not showing any type of effective communication, because that person is not doing the most important thing that you need to do, is to listen, and that person is obviously not listening. So the style of communication between the two people or more is just not going to be effective. And then you have the manipulative, you have the polite, you have the creative, the sarcastic, and the passive. So that's just to get you familiar with the first 7 conversational styles that you will find that you'll meet every single day. And you'll have to try to realize that each one of these is going to, you're not going to have effective communication in any one of these conversational styles. So next slide, please. And then the conceptual background of elements. There are 6 elements of the background, which we'll go over today, between the sender and the receiver. So you basically have your decision, and then you have your encoding, and then you're sending the message, and then there's the channel and way the message is, the message goes through, right? Whether that's going to be a written channel or or through your texting on your phone. There's many ways to send that message or channel that message. And then the receiver has to decode the message, and they also have to internalize the message in their own way to actually comprehend what the sender is saying to the receiver. So next slide, please. And then the decision. So the decision is deciding to speak and choosing what thoughts the individual would like to put forth in the conversation. So I'm sure you've always heard, think before you talk. So basically, before the words even come out of your mouth, you are deciding. Your brain is really thinking what you are going to say. Next slide, please. And then there's the encoding. So this is the process in which the speaker attempts to translate his or her thoughts and perceptions into words. Next slide. And then, of course, the articulation of the words the individual would like to convey. This is so important, right? How you articulate. And everybody, sometimes you might be talking to someone and it sort of sounds muffled to you, or, that's your perception of how the articulation is going from the sender to, or the receiver to the sender. And articulation is one of them, and that may change the effectiveness of the actual communication. Next slide. And then, of course, the channel. So that's the message, the sent, the message is sent and travels to the receiver via a channel. And that could be the sound waves, that could be sign language, video recording, and so forth. So just the way the message actually travels from one person to the next. And next slide, please. And then the decoding. So the process in which the listener attempts to understand and interpret what the speaker has encoded in his or her message. And that is so important, because if you think about that, it's the key to being an effective communicator is listening, right? So we all know that in some ways we don't always listen, right? Or sometimes we hear what we want to hear, or there's just so many things going on, or distractions from the outside, that the interpreter isn't really hearing the true message. And that could be also said, we can also think about sometimes when we're communicating via text, right? We text someone something, and the receiver might interpret our text in a different way. So that's the process of decoding, and we're going to have hiccups in decoding, because things aren't always communicated the way the receiver or the sender wants the receiver to interpret the message. Next slide, please. And then you have the internal response. And so that is the receiver contemplates the message and they have that internal response, right? So your response to whatever message that you are getting, i.e., you get angry from the message, or you could be upset from the message, or it's good news and you feel relieved, or you just might be totally uninterested, right? So that would be your internal response to the actual message that you are receiving. Next slide, please. Okay, and then, like I said earlier, there's always that noise, right? That noise distraction from the outside. And that's going to negatively influence the effectiveness of the communication and interpretation of the conversation. So there are 4 common sources of noise. And you have the personality. This is the sender's past experience provides a frame of reference for sending the message, such as beliefs, attitudes, and personality. So these factors may vary from person to person and they could distort the message, right? So it just really depends on, every person is different, every personality is different. So of course the messages are going to come out differently. And that's a big one too when you're playing that game of telephone from the start to the end. You have personality differences, and that is going to change that actual message from the beginning to the end. And then lack of skills. Of course, the sender lacks sufficient skills in encoding, right? They can't put their thoughts into words. And so with that said, that's what we call lack of skills. But the good thing in maybe not having the skills is it is something that you could work on and improve every day to be more effective communicator. So it definitely isn't just going to stop because you may lack the skills. You can work on being an effective communicator more every single day. And then you have the external factors. So the communication can have noise, right? And say you're in your house or you're trying to talk to someone and you hear like the neighbors mowing the lawn. That's a distraction from an outside source, such as other people making a lot of noise, bad telephone connection, right? As well as speech impediments. So sometimes stuttering or any type of distracting mannerisms as well. And then the receiver's past experiences. So the receiver's past experiences, they form a frame of reference for receiving and interpreting the message, which can affect the decoding process. So a lot of times the receiver, in their head, their past experience could actually interfere with the actual decoding process of the initial message sent. And then we have communication. And believe it or not, nonverbal communication, along with paralanguage, comes second. That is, the percentage is so much higher than verbal communication, if you can believe it or not. And that has, I think it's like 80%, to be honest with you, of communication is nonverbal communication. Quite interesting. So next slide. And so nonverbal communication is all aspects of communication other than words themselves, right? It includes how we utter words, features of environments that affect interactions, and also that influence personal images and interaction patterns. Next slide. And the 3 types of nonverbal communication are kinesics, proxemics, and paralanguage. Excuse me. Next slide. So kinesics, that's your body language, right? That shows how people's feelings without communicating to them verbally. So how you present yourself, how you stand, do you have your arms crossed? What that means, maybe you're not open to the other person as opposed to talking to them with your hands open. How are you standing? Do you have good posture? Are you making good eye contact? Any, are you standing, are you walking with like your head down, talking to somebody? So any type of body movement is going to also affect that communication, and that's called kinesics. Next slide. And then, of course, physical appearance. In each culture, stereotypes develop that are based on our physical appearances, right? So that also is going to affect the communication, just on how we perceive another person's physical appearance to be. It's almost we make that pre-assumption that is going to affect our communication initially with that other person. Next slide. And then posture. So slumped posture is a sign of feeling low, right? Fatigued, maybe inferior to somebody else. When you're walking around with your head down, that's not really showing that you are, that you're positive or upbeat. You might be, down on yourself. So as opposed to being an upright posture, which reflects that you're confident and you're open, usually, full of energy. Also, the way people walk communicates how they feel. So when people are sad, they kind of shuffle slowly and with their hands in their pockets, maybe. Whereas if you're happy, right, you usually walk energized. You can really see happiness, even talking to somebody and not seeing them. Right? Did you ever hear smile through the phone? They can feel that happiness energy vibe, even without even seeing you. Also, though, as the way that you present yourself and the way that you move and your posture is also going to show your really the way you're feeling. You're going to communicate how you feel without even talking. Next slide. So gestures. Many people communicate with gestures in various your body movements. This allows for a person to show different feelings, such as being angry or sad, sincerity, etc. Right? So your everyday gestures to someone really is going to relate your emotions without you even having to say a word. And then touching. This is a common form of body language used to express our affection, right? To calm or interrupt, or a firm handshake, or handshakes, or hugs, or kissing, pats on the back. All of that is communicating with someone and expressing how the sender feels about the receiver without actually talking. And then, of course, facial expressions, right? Our face is our most expressive body part, right? Eye contact, it shows your interest, and that shows that you are listening when you make eye contact with someone. To me, that's the number one thing that you should do when you're communicating, is make sure you're looking at that person. You want to look at that person. Also, you can look at that person through eye contact, and it's also can show how you feel about someone, possibly romantically, right? It also can show conflict and also can show that you're mad, a stern look. So basically, however you are making that eye contact is also going to express how you feel without actually talking. And then also, we know that we send facial expressions every single day and we communicate, right? We send emojis. We send happy face, sad face, mad face, confused face, right? All of that. So basically, it's the same thing. Those are facial expressions, and that's a way that we communicate. And we can communicate that with our actual face, and we can communicate text, sending emojis. And then proxemics is the study of how we communicate by the way we use our space, right? Sometimes you have to recognize space. You don't want to be, right on top of somebody when you're talking to them, or sort of invading their personal space. I'm sure you've heard that before. They have their space, you have your space. So the distance between you and others and how you arrange furniture and other objects for social interaction, and how you respond to the invasion of territory. So that's very, very important. And I think that's one thing a lot of times, to me, I feel that could be culture related. You know, sometimes someone from another country might not think about your personal space because that's not what they're used to. You know, they may be used to like talking to you, you know, this close, and you're just like, whoa, you know, my space is my space. So that is a real big one, that I feel no one should really take that as offensively, because some, you know, a lot of people, that's culture, and that's just, you know, they didn't learn that it should be that way. So don't take that personally if it does happen to you. Next slide. Yeah, so are you a little too close to somebody? Next slide. Or are we not close enough? Right? Am I talking to you from like, you know, way across the room, or are you, you know, at home, and am I like yelling at you from, you know, upstairs to downstairs? That's going to affect our communication. We're too far apart. Next slide. And then you got your paralanguage, right? So this is basically all your vocal components of speech, and it reflects what a person's feeling. So you have your pitch, highness, lowness of the sound of your voice, right? And then you have the richness of or thinness of your voice, your renesis. And then you have your articulation, the way you actually communicate, and your tempo, the speed at which your words are spoken. You know, sometimes you can't follow someone because they're talking way too fast, right? Or maybe it's way too slow for you. So try to get that tempo somewhere in a happy medium. The volume, right? So loudness, softness with the when you speak. Also, volume could be that can be associated too from, you know, what area of the country you come from, right? So a lot of East Coast people, they talk really loud, right? So that's what they're used to. So that's something too that's also culture, or what part of the country that you may come from, is, you know, depending on how loud or soft you talk. And then there's rhythm. So that emphasis place, that is different words and basically how you put the words into speech, your rhythm of your words. And that's paralanguage. Next slide on that. So I said this earlier, and when I was researching this, you know, I thought it was kind of cool to see that paralanguage, what I just went over in the slide, you're at 38%, right? Body language, you're at 55%. And your actual spoken verbal words, you're at 7%. I find that like very, very interesting. So we're always taught to be, you know, to articulate and try to be an effective communicator with our words. But look what the percentage is. Body language is first, and paralanguage follows. So the importance of nonverbal communication is above the importance of actual verbal communication. Nonverbal communication is essentially to fully understand a message when two or more people are communicating. And then in 1968, so we have Albert, you say his name, Mahabrian. He analyzed typical communication between two people and concluded that the total impact of the message was divided in that way. I did try to get an update on that because that was older, and it didn't seem to change in any type of way. Just so everybody knows, the, you know, body language still came out to be number one over verbal communication. Next slide. Okay, so now we have listening, attending, and responding skills. And how do you listen? So, as I said earlier, in order for you to be an effective communicator, the number one thing that you must do, is take the time to listen. Okay, really important. Next slide. Next slide. So there's more to it than just hearing. Key elements involved and effective. So the number one is listening, and then attending, right? And then of course responding. So the key elements involved in effective listening, attending, and responding. So assume the role of the listener. Listening, attending, and responding. So you want to maintaining eye contact, right? Versus no eye contact. So avoid word prejudice. This is really hard. I mean, you even hear it like if you watch the media, right? And they're talking or they're interviewing somebody. I always count the times that or oh, and everyone really does that. So with that said, if you could kind of be mindful of that and try to say less of that when you pause, and basically you could just sort of be silent. No one will ever, when you're trying to get your thoughts together, instead of saying lots of people do that, but you could actually just try to pause for a minute, and no one is even really going to notice that as much as you saying I mean, you'd be surprised how many people count the amount of times that you're saying that, and that's just your natural transition because you're trying to think of what is going to come next. You're getting your thoughts together, and if you can be mindful of that, you sort of can just pause and be a little silent, and no one will even notice that as much as they'll notice your words of, oh, or or next slide. So you want to paraphrase what was said to ensure understanding, right? So if you are communicating something to me, I usually will say something back to you. So what I heard you say was paraphrase what the person actually said to you. Elaboration of minimum encourager and key phrase plus personal observation. So always ask questions to improve clarity of the statement, right? Say something to you. Sometimes you don't have to directly answer. You could ask a question to them back, and then you're going to get that clarification. Use empathy to reflect and share feelings. Okay, you always want to, somebody is not, they may be having a bad day, or they tell you that they're upset, or let's just say you work in customer service, right? And the customer is really, really upset, and they could be yelling at you, right? And you're on the other side. Most important thing you need to do is show empathy and recognize that other person and how truly they are feeling. And then also that's going to open the communication between that really upset person, because you're showing them and you're validating their feelings. So that is very, very important, especially for anyone that has a customer service job. That's probably one of the first things that you should know and understand. But use empathy when you are talking to somebody to share the way they may be feeling. Usually you want to summarize the content of what was said. You'll see that a lot in the workforce. If you're out there in a job, you usually people summarize what has happened, or perhaps minutes in a meeting, right? Something to that effect. A lot of times in your everyday, you might not be doing that, but generally in when you go out there to the workforce, you'll see a lot of recap and summarization of what was said in order to make sure that that communication is effective. And this is just a journal article on the measurement of communication skills and where the information came from. So this was a test on listening, right? So it was a journal article and it was a measurement of communication skills. So basically what they did was they took the basic methods, they directly trained 2 sections of college students for 6 weeks. And this group had pre-test scores, right? And then they trained 2 sections of college students. This group had the highest pre-test scores. So the results were, so they directly trained, and then it was just like incidentally, right? So the results, the directly trained group, they made significant gains in scores during the period of training, right? And then the incidentally trained group, they did not. So that says a lot for itself right there in terms of the measurement of communication skills. The one group that was directly trained, and then the second group that was not. So the major findings was no significant differences were noted between the groups on the post-test results. And then we have discussion of the results. So the findings indicated that listening skills could be improved by training, right? So what that means for us is that we can improve our listening skills, right? So we can lead to better communication skills, better listeners to friends and family, right? This is every single day. Better employees. We can be better students. We can be better in many areas of our life. So, and it basically can help you peak your performance all around. So the key to being an outstanding communicator is not so much the words of wisdom that come out of your mouth, but how well you listen to the words of wisdom that come out of the mouths of others. Okay, so now the steps to enhance communication skills and conflict resolution. So a disagreement occurs over the perception of information available. And when a person has conflicting values within his or her own value system, this is a value conflict. And then we have the ego conflict, right? So the ego conflict is based on win-lose mentality, right? That is the hardest type to resolve. And, you know, when you see that, it's just, people just don't know what to do, because the ego conflict person, you know, what they're saying is more important than what you're saying. They really are not listening, right? And they'll usually are the types that are going to be interrupted, because that what they are saying is more important than what you have to say. And so the ego conflict is tough because they're not going to listen. And therefore, there isn't going to be a communication between them and really anybody else. And then the conflict management style. So these are just the different styles to actually manage conflict. So we can So you have avoidance, right? You also have negative conflict management style, aggression, which is often used to intimidate others, right? We have persuasion, an attempt to uh, uh, really go after somebody in terms of personal attitude or behavior, and then dialogue. That's a verbal exchange of opinions, right? Attitudes, facts, or perceptions. So those would be the different management styles of conflict. And then next, we're going to just talk about steps to enhance communication skills. So we're going to go from negative to positive, and I'm sure everybody's hears that every day, right? Positivity is just going to give you so many more skills out there, just being positive every single day, to include communication. Speak with precision and directness, right? You just want to try to be as precise as you can when you're talking to someone. Select words that accurately describe your thoughts and feelings, right? So, how are you today? Dot, dot, dot. I'm okay. Enhance your vocabulary. So, a small vocabulary decreases the ability to actually express yourself. So, whereas a greater number of words to choose from provides you with greater flexibility to say what you want to say. So, sound more professional, more classy, more educated. And of course, this is something that will improve your ability to communicate more effectively, and you can work on this yourself. And with this said, this is very powerful to enhance your vocabulary, because I can't think of any profession out there that is not going to benefit from an effective communicator. So it's really important, and this is something like you can just take on your own to improve your communication skills. Use language appropriate for listening audience. So access which words or expressions or gestures are most conductive to getting your point across. And also, with this said, I just like to add to this. Always be mindful of your setting, and always be mindful of your audience, right? So we could be in a school setting and we have students and faculty, and that's the audience, and then the setting is the school. And then we can be home, right? And our setting is our home, and our husband or wife or child or dog or whoever's in your home. So that's going to be your audience, and your setting is going to be your home. And then you could have, let's just say, like a Friday night out with the girls, or Friday night out with the guys, right? So think about that. What is your setting and what is your audience? And so you might express yourself completely different or communicate completely different depending on where you are, what the setting is, and who the audience is. So when it comes to communicating effectively, just be mindful of your audience in your setting. So you always want to, also be mindful of attacking the issue, right? But not the person. So we want to avoid, character assassinations. Attacking people clouds the issue, and it makes it harder, and it's impossible to resolve the issue. So never attack the person, just what the issue is. And that, of course, is not good for effective arguments either, if you're putting that person down, and that's not really what the issue is. The issue is we need to resolve the conflict, but we don't need to hurt the other person. And also with that, when we give our advice, this is sort of on the other spectrum of attacking people. When you don't just give your advice to somebody, because you may be hurting them, because they may not want to hear your advice. Wait until the person actually asks you, so what do you think? And then they're giving you that, they're sending you that message that they're open to hearing your advice. Okay. Next slide, please. Avoid putting others on the defense, right? Placing the responsibility of understanding on yourself rather than blaming others. So that minimizes defensiveness. And this is really, really, really true when you're dealing with different attitudes or different personalities. Definitely, put the blame on yourself. Like, I perceive this, okay, or I see this going on, but not, hey, this is what you did. Okay, that's automatically, you're cutting off any type of communication whatsoever because the other person is on the defense. So you always want to minimize that and bring it more to yourself. Avoid asking someone to pass on your thoughts or feelings to a third party. So the most effective communication involves talking with someone face to face, right? Like I said earlier, sometimes when you're communicating via text or something like that, you might want to say like, hey, can I call you real quick and talk either face to face with them or your words over the phone via a text that might get misconstrued and someone might interpret it a different way. So you definitely, if you can talk to them face to face, it would probably be best if there's any type of conflict in that communication. Next slide, please. Attention span, it's limited, right? So it's the amount of information that can be received and processed. And this goes along with young minds as well. Usually they, as an educator, I always practice what we call the 7-7-7 because the younger children, grade school children, let's just say from age, let's say 5 to age 12, they will only listen to you for 7 minutes. So after 7 minutes, they have no idea what you said. So you have to switch it up and go to something else to keep them on track. And this is just a little joke, like 65 slides on my communication. So basically, if something is too long, you lose people, right? They're thinking about something else. Their mind is somewhere else. They are not focused on what you're saying. So try to be direct and try to be, precise. And if it is long, you want to try to divert it into something else so people's tracking can sort of have a meeting right there in the middle and they can go back to what you're saying. It's a hard thing to do. If you feel there's a oops, sorry. Go back one slide. Okay. So, so confirm what you think to be true and with those that have given you this impression. So you want to validate any type of assumptions. If you feel there's a misunderstanding, there probably is, right? So this is where you communication. Misunderstandings is the biggie. Try to deal with issues as they surface by talking it out and also with those involved. And it's a drama-free zone, right? So let's try to be drama-free. For skills to be effective, they must be practiced regularly. So I told everybody, practice your communication skills, and you will see if you do practice it regularly that you will become a more effective communicator. And that's it. I do thank you for your time. And are we going up open for questions?
I
currently
have
don't
a
have
question.
Sure.
I have a question, Anne. You spoke of avoiding word prejudice. What is word prejudice?
So, word prejudice is, uh, it's more of a cultural thing. Uh, so uh, basically, if another culture uses a certain type of word and it's more of a culture thing, and you use it, uh, it might be taken offensively, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, I
So,
get it. Mhm.
yeah. So avoid that altogether.
I also have another question. You spoke about when you're on a phone smiling. Does this also, if you like write an email, if you smile while you're writing the email, will that come across in your communication?
Cynthia, yes, that is so true. So always smile, because your emotions are going to come out in any type of communication. And that is a great question. So you're writing that email, if you're mad or you're frowning while you're writing that email, your words in some way, you might not think about it, but they will express your emotions. So definitely you just want to smile whether they can see you or not, in everything that you do, any type of communication, and it will come across positive.
Okay, okay. And uh I had another question. Let's see if there's some questions from Facebook, and I will remember that other question I had for you. Anything else?
There's no questions at the moment on Facebook.
Okay. Well, I think it's really interesting. I mean, you have covered so much, especially with like body language. We can't fake it. We can't fake body language. And so I'm so glad that you
Yes,
talked about that.
can't fake the
Yeah.
funk. So true. I
You
love it.
know, you could tell somebody words, but they know exactly what you're thinking, you
Yes.
know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very true. Very, very. And you know
Yeah.
what? As being the person that's actually has the body movements and is expressing themselves, aware that they're coming across that way, but the other person totally sees it, because
Mm-hmm.
they're used that body language is the norm to them. They're used to that. And then you get that
Right.
other person, and it's just kind of like, what is wrong with this person, right? You know? So it's really true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I agree too, like with there's two sides of communication. There's the person who's trying to say something, but they're coming from their background, their dialect, their way of thinking. And then there's the receiving part that has their own background and dialect, way of thinking. And it quite often can happen, huh?
Yeah.
Communication just gets messed up.
So interesting, isn't it? If you really look at it.
Hmm.
So really, really, really interesting. I just love reading about it and studying about it, because there's so much that can be learned, and you get that kind of aha moment, because a lot of times people are not really looking at it. They're just thinking, you know, why is this person acting like this, or what are they doing? Why are they doing that? You have to think about too. Like I brought up the customer situation. Let's just say you're in customer service and you have that person, you're on the other end, and that person's mad and they're yelling at you, right? So the first thing you want to be like, hey, don't yell at me, like but if you come across and just empathize with them and say, I understand what you're saying and I'm here to help, they're going to stop yelling at you without you telling them, hey, don't yell at me.
Hmm.
They're going to instantly, it's going to click.
Hmm.
So it's really it's a cool thing, the way communication works or doesn't work.
I did remember my other question. I know myself and my children have learned when mom's upset, give her space because she needs a couple of hours or days to calm down. So you had mentioned something about that, just don't come at people the split second your button got pushed, kind of a thing. Do you recommend that, of just kind of taking time to go breathe or scream in a corner?
I totally do. Always. Definitely breathe before you react, right? So I touch on that a little bit. But when you're in a state of anger, right, you might say things that you really don't mean. So when you step back and think and take yourself out and cool down or breathe, then you're going to come across very differently because you gave your brain time to actually think about why you are actually angry. You
Mhm.
give your brain time to think about that. So when you're going to relate that message, it's going to come across a total different way than when your brain is so full of that anger message that the only way that you're going to come across is the way your brain is actually thinking at that moment.
Mhm.
So you're going to come across that way, even though you didn't intend to do that.
Right.
Yeah. So you definitely want to, you don't want to react. You want to take the moment to think about it. Same as, sometimes when you think about something, right? It's sometimes the next day, it isn't as bad as to you as it was
Right.
the day prior, right? That's
Mhm.
because you gave your brain some time to process.
Mhm. Yeah, got some oxygen back up there.
No doubt.
So, and this has all been wonderful, wonderful information. We are just so thrilled. You and your coworkers have given us a lot of food for thought on working in the workplace with communication, how to get in a workplace, how to deal with being in a workplace, and your wonderful talk on communicating in a workplace, which is like literally number one because you're with everyone all day long, So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and put it in our comment section. I know Anne will probably check. We can check and we can relay the questions to her. The Workforce Solutions of Central Texas is there for you, as well as our CTC Career Center. You can get all of this information from them and from us. You're not out there in the workforce alone. We can pretty much give you like just all of the great information Anne gave us today. We can give you that information. We can you can take a class and learn how to breathe. We have those too here. Anything that it takes to make all of you successful in the workplace. Thank you, Anne, for joining us today. Thank you, Lee, for setting this up today with us. Thank you, Workforce Solutions of Central Texas, for being in our space. And I see Mara, one of our instructors, is joining us. Mara, what are you doing? See, look how ready they are to help you. Mara is on call right now for anyone who has a question.
She must have been watching us.
I don't know, but so Workforce Solutions of Central Texas is ready for you at a moment's notice. If you need any information or you want contact information, just put it in our contacts list, or maybe Lee can go ahead and upload some information both for Workforce Solutions and also for our Career Center. So thank you so much again for joining us. Remember, in November, we're partnering with the Alzheimer's Association, and they will be doing a speaker event about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. So, when you go home for the holidays or whatever, you will have some information. All right. Well, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lee.
Bye.
Thank you, Cindy.
Bye.